Discord. All right, billions will die in 2025. Breaking news, WF document confirms 6 billion will die in 2025. So next year. That's a lot of people, and it's going to be very quiet. But they want to control the populations. So 6 billion lives at stake by 2025, Agenda 2030 in full swing. So here we go.
Okay. In a world teetering on the brink of catastrophe, the warning signs have been there all along, hidden in plain sight. The truth is no longer just a whisper among conspiracy theorists, but a stark reality that demands attention. According to a document from the World Economic Forum, WEF, the global elite have set in motion a plan to drastically reduce the world's population, aiming to see 6 billion people gone by 2025. This is not a theory, it's the cold, hard truth. The clock is ticking, and if we don't act now, the consequences will be irreversible.
A shocking WEF document surfaces. The World Economic Forum, often seen as the hub of global elites, has been the subject of many discussions, but none as chilling as this. The document has surfaced, revealing a plan that has been quietly in motion for years. According to this report, the WEF, under the leadership of Klaus Schwab, interesting name, has set an ambitious and terrifying goal: the reduction of the global population by a staggering 6 billion people by the year 2025. Not saying by the end of the year, by the year.
This revelation isn't just shocking, it's downright terrifying. And for years, whispers of depopulation plans have been dismissed as conspiracy theories. But now, with this document in hand, the truth is undeniable. The global elite are no longer just they aren't talking about reducing the population, they are actively working towards it, and they're doing it with a cold, calculated efficiency that should send shivers down the spine of anyone paying attention.
The less amount of people in the world, ladies and gentlemen, the more control they have over you. That's what the Pharisees tried to do. That's what the Romans tried to do 2,000-3,000 years ago during the time of Christ. They're doing it again, and we're just sitting and letting them do it. Agenda 2030, the blueprint. Agenda 2030, a United Nations initiative ostensibly aimed at promoting sustainable development, has always had a darker undercurrent for those willing to look beyond the surface. Now it's clear that this agenda is not about saving the planet, but about controlling it at the cost of billions of lives. The WEF document makes it abundantly clear that the so-called sustainability goals are nothing more than a smokescreen for a much more sinister plan.
The depopulation agenda is not new. It's been whispered about for decades. But what is new is the brazen way in which it's now being executed. The WEF and its allies are no longer hiding their intentions. They are putting them into action, and the results are beginning to show. The global population is being systematically reduced through a combination of engineered pandemics, economic destabilization, and social manipulation. This Agenda 2030 is in action, and the consequences are dire.
So that means that the deep state's pushing as hard as they can to do all this, and they don't care who's involved, and it sounds like all your police officers are involved with them. Isn't that interesting? They hate you too. So it's time that we come together, we voice it, we can stop going to work, we can just start getting out there, we can go to Parliament, we can go to the mainstream media, we take over. That's just a suggestion. Alright, the global elite's endgame, a controlled and enslaved society. The question that must be asked is why? Why would the global elite want to reduce the world's population by such a massive amount? The answer lies in their ultimate goal: control. A world with a population of just 1 billion is much easier to control than a world of 7 billion. By reducing the population, the global elite can consolidate their power and create a world where they have absolute control over every aspect of life. Sounds like the book of Revelation.
This is not about saving the planet or creating a better world for future generations. This is about power, pure, unadulterated power. The global elite have always sought to control the world, but now they are taking it to the next level. By reducing the population, they can create a society where they hold all the power and the rest of humanity is nothing more than a servant class.
The methods of from pandemics to economic collapse. So how are they doing it? How are the global elite working to achieve this drastic reduction in the world's population? The methods are as varied as they are insidious.
Number 1, engineered pandemics. The COVID-19 pandemic was just the beginning. The global elite have used the pandemic as a tool to instill fear, control populations, and begin the process of depopulation. Vaccines touted as a solution may be in fact part of the problem, with questions being raised about their long-term effects on human fertility and health.
2, economic destabilization. The global economy is on the brink of collapse, and this is no accident. The elite have been manipulating markets, currencies, and economies for years, pushing the world towards a financial meltdown that will leave billions destitute and desperate. So economic collapse will lead to mass poverty, starvation, and ultimately death on an unprecedented scale.
Number 3, social manipulation. From the spread of misinformation to the promotion of divisive ideologies, the global elite are using social manipulation as a tool to weaken societies from within. By fostering division and conflict, they are making it easier to implement their depopulation agenda. A divided society is a weak society, and a weak society is easier to control and ultimately to reduce.
It's very funny because it sounds like the beginning of tribulation. When people are gone, this is what you got a choice of, him or this. So I think that's interesting. Klaus Schwab, the architect of humanity's destruction. At the center of this terrifying plan is Klaus Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. Schwab has long been a proponent of radical global change, and his vision for the future is one where the global elite hold all the power under his leadership. That's really weird. And the WEF has become the driving force behind Agenda 2030, and the depopulation agenda. So if you think about this, Agenda 2030, and he's become the big one, this is Demolition Man. Who's that guy? Boom. Okay, go ahead.
Schwab's vision for the future is not one of prosperity and peace, but one of control and domination. He has spoken openly about the need for a great reset, a concept that sounds benign, but in reality is a blueprint for the destruction of the world as we know it. The Great Reset is not about building back better, it's about tearing down the existing world order and replacing it with a new one where the global elite have absolute control. The role of technology, from surveillance to credit, social credit. Technology plays a crucial role in the global elite's plan. Advances in surveillance, technology, artificial intelligence, and social credit systems are being used to monitor, control, and manipulate populations on a scale never before seen. These technologies, while often touted as tools for progress and safety, are in fact tools of oppression.
Surveillance. From facial recognition software to data tracking, which is probably the need for the masks, the global elite are using technology to keep tabs on every aspect of our lives. Privacy is becoming a thing of the past as governments and corporations collect vast amounts of data on every individual. This data is then used to control and manipulate behavior, ensuring that the population remains compliant and under control. So what this sounds to me is like Lucifer trying to distract you more and more and more, keeping you away from God and Jesus, where you can be focused there. That would piss them off more. But nobody's doing that. They're really obsessed over this. Social credit systems. In countries like China, social credit systems are already in place, controlling every aspect of life from where you can live to where you can work. These systems are now being introduced in other parts of the world, slowly but surely under the guise of safety and security, but in reality they are tools of oppression designed to control the population and ensure compliance with the global elite's agenda. Man, this sounds familiar.
Artificial intelligence. AI is being used to replace human workers, making vast numbers of people redundant. As automation increases, the need for a large population decreases. The global elite are using AI not just as a tool of progress, but as a tool of depopulation.
The environmental ruse, weaponizing climate change. That's going to be an interesting one. Climate change has been weaponized by the global elite as another tool in their depopulation agenda. While the planet undoubtedly faces environmental changes, the response to these challenges has been hijacked by those with an agenda far removed from saving the planet.
The push for drastic measures to combat climate change, including the promotion of policies that reduce energy consumption and food production, is not about saving the environment. It's about reducing the population. By creating scarcity, the global elite can force populations into compliance, making them easier to control and ultimately to reduce.
The mainstream media played a crucial role in the execution of the depopulation agenda by controlling the narrative. The global elite have been able to keep the population in the dark about what is really happening. The media has become a tool of propaganda, spreading misinformation and silencing dissenting voices.
From the coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic to the reporting on climate change, the media has constantly pushed the narrative that supports the global elite's agenda. Anyone who questions this narrative is labeled a conspiracy theorist and silenced. This control of information is vital to the success of the depopulation agenda. It prevents the population from understanding the true scale of what's happening.
So they're consistently pushing the narrative. Interesting. Because consistency is how you brainwash people. The resistance, fighting back against global elite. Despite the overwhelming power of the global elite, there is hope. Across the world, people are waking up to the truth and beginning to resist. From grassroots movements to independent media, there is a growing resistance to the depopulation agenda. Grassroots movements.
Across the world, people are organizing to resist the global elite's agenda. From protests against vaccine mandates to movements for economic justice, these grassroots movements are challenging the power of the global elite and fighting for a future where humanity is free from their control.
Independent media. As the mainstream media becomes increasingly controlled by the global elite, independent media has become more important than ever. Independent journalists and media outlets are exposing the truth and providing a platform for voices that have been silenced by the mainstream media. So this is a crucial part of the resistance. As it allows people to access the information, they need to understand what is really happening.
Individual action. Every individual has a role to play in resisting the global elite's agenda. By staying informed, spreading the truth, and refusing to comply with the measures being imposed by the global elite, individuals can fight back against the depopulation agenda. Every act of resistance, no matter how small, is a step towards reclaiming our future.
So in conclusion, the time to act is now. The revelation that the World Economic Forum is actively working towards the depopulation of the planet by 2025, is a wake-up call for humanity. This is not a conspiracy theory, it is the truth, and it is happening right before our eyes. We're just not paying attention. The global elite has set in motion a plan that, if successful, will result in the deaths of billions of people and the creation of a world where they hold absolute power.
But it's not too late to act. By staying informed, spreading the truth, and resisting the measures being imposed by the global elite, we can fight back against this agenda and protect the future of humanity. The time to act is now.
A World Economic Forum report hiding in plain sight confirms that upwards of 6 billion people will die in 2025. And according to reports from Davos, Klaus Schwab has confirmed the stated goal is on target to be achieved. The global elite have been warning us about their plans to radically depopulate the Earth by any means necessary. And now, the results are playing out before our eyes. If we have any hope of stopping them from achieving their goal of murdering the vast majority of humanity and turning Earth into a prison planet to enslave the rest, this information in the report must be shared far and wide. Before we dive in, join the People's Voice Locals community if you haven't already, and sign up to become a member of the world's first ever cyber nation that truly believes in life, liberty, and the pursuit of your dreams. Visit joson.com and click the Join Us button today. It's completely free. WF co-founder Klaus Schwab was caught boasting in a loose-lipped moment with reporters that Agenda 2030 is a red herring or ruse to throw normies off the scent. In reality, the situation is more urgent than that. 2025 is the year the elites are earmarking for massive worldwide depopulation. And according to Schwab, the goal of reducing the population by more than 6 billion people is on track to be achieved. A BBC journalist reported that she was summoned to Davos earlier this month for the regular meeting where Klaus Schwab briefs the mainstream media on which narratives to promote in order to advance the globalist agenda. The journalist noted that it was her first time attending the monthly media meeting in Davos, though some of her colleagues have been participating for years.
Okay, I'm going to pause this for a second. So with his idea being the Great Reset and Nassara being gold back, all he has to do is say, fuck the reset, let's just take the gold back. Let's just control Nassara, right? In 3.5 years, we'll have a microchip in the right hand, revelation, and we'll control them all in prison. And if you don't want to follow Christ, you're going to follow us, whether you like it or not. 7-year tribulation.
Hello. 3.5 years in.
And I mean, look at it. He's saying by 2025. Demolition Man. He came out of the cryogenics in 2032. That's 7 years. Interesting.
She describes Klaus as being strangely emotional, almost as if he were intoxicated, laughing frequently and reminiscing in a sociopathic manner about the depopulation agenda, which he admitted has been intricately planned for decades.
It was my first time visiting Klaus's lair, though most of my colleagues had been there before. They warned me it would be unsettling, but nothing could have prepared me for what I experienced. They weren't surprised by what happened, but I was horrified. The place was surreal, like something out of a nightmare, scrupulously clean, yet sinister, and perched high in the Swiss mountains. When I met him, I expected cold calculation, and yeah, that was there. But what I didn't expect was the strange, almost emotional state he was in. He was laughing, almost drunkenly, as he recounted his plans. It was as if he was reminiscing fondly about some long-held dream. He started talking about the depopulation agenda, and that's when it really hit me. He wasn't just outlining some distant theory, he was recalling it like a twisted memory, something carefully planned for decades. He said, "The chickens are finally coming home to roost." There was something about this phrase that made me feel sick to my stomach, and it wasn't just because of his accent. His voice would waver between chilling calm and sudden bursts of laughter, as if he found the whole thing amusing in the most grotesque way. He spoke about the plan to eradicate 6 billion people by next year, but it wasn't this idea alone that shook me, it was how he delivered it. There was a bizarre mix of pride and nostalgia in his tone. He spoke slowly and clearly, as if he were recounting a great achievement. He even seemed to get choked up at one point, as if this horror he was planning was something deeply personal to him. My colleagues, they'd warned me, but they seemed almost resigned to it. They weren't shocked, not like I was. To them, it was just another story, another day. But to me, it was a nightmare come to life. The way he spoke, the way he laughed about it. It was like he was planning a practical joke, not plotting mass murder. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was utterly convinced this was the right course, that this was the future. And in that moment, I realized just how real the danger was. This wasn't just a madman's rant. It was a meticulously planned operation, decades in the making. I've never felt so helpless, knowing that I was face to face with someone who had the power and the intent to carry out the most horrifying agenda imaginable. And the worst part? He seemed to enjoy every minute of it.
Schwab has every reason to feel confident in the fulfillment of his evil plans. He has recruited the majority of the cabinets in the governments of Western nations, subverting our democracies. The WF's generation of young global leaders have destroyed from the inside the once great nations of the UK, France, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. The mainstream media, the education system, and science have been compromised by the globalist elites, paid off by eugenicist billionaires and megalomaniacs to become mouthpieces of the globalist agenda. As the next generation of leaders prepare to hammer the final nail in the coffin, it's time to make a stand before Schwab's sick vision comes to fruition.
So,
to defeat the globalists,
You just saw where it says in an article that Kamala Harris's plan is to push through that agenda on day one. You know she's not going to win the election.
Let's first understand them, and we've uncovered their documents and their detailed plans. But first, an important message from our sponsor. Today's sponsor